Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Good to go? All right, my name's Stewart Rhodes with Oathkeepers, and like she said, I used to work for Congressman Paul, and like I always tell people, when I realized that we couldn't have a real, sincere Oathkeeper, someone to keep their oath in the White House, I decided that it didn't make a difference to me whether it was McCain, whether it was Hillary Clinton, whether it was Obama. I already knew from their prior actions that they had already broken their oaths and weren't sincere about obeying the oath to defend the Constitution, and especially our Bill of Rights. And so I thought, well, the next best thing I can do is constitutional triage. And anybody who went through the Bush years is probably quite well aware of the serious erosion or destruction of our Bill of Rights that was done to us in the name of fighting terror. And it's kind of sad to have leftist critics today of me claim that I'm being paranoid. When I was at Yale Law School, my focus when I was there was on enemy combatant status. How many folks know what that is? Enemy combatant status? That's the claim that the president, as commander-in-chief, can treat any American citizen as though they were a foreign enemy in wartime and strip you of the due process rights under the Bill of Rights. No indictment, no right to an attorney, no right to a jury trial, and pretty much just black bag you, as is done overseas, and put you in a military brig. And that was done to 2 American citizens post 9/11. Yasser Hamdi and a guy named Jose Padilla. How many folks have heard of those names? Jose Padilla. He was kept in a military brig for over 3 years. Not allowed access to anybody. No due process under our Bill of Rights. One of the causes of our revolution, when you go back and read the Declaration of Independence, was the denial of jury trial and being spirited away across the seas for pretend trials, kangaroo trials, in a court foreign to their jurisdiction. That was the Admiralty courts. Because back then they knew the notorious smuggler like John Hancock, that's what he was, a notorious smuggler, would never be found guilty by his fellow citizens of Boston Harbor. So they denied jury trial. They would whisk you away to England for trial before judges in an Admiralty court. And the founders understood in English history, the history of the Star Chamber. You know that story? They tortured you until you confessed in a secret hearing. You weren't allowed to confront your accusers. And once you confessed, much like a show trial in the Soviet Union, in Stalin's show trials, then they would execute you after you confessed to your crimes. So the founders had that history. They knew what it was like. They lived under it themselves. That's why they gave us the 4th Amendment, and the 5th, and the 6th. And yet, one of the causes of our revolution is now being done to us today. First by Bush, and now Obama has not relinquished those powers. He has not denied them. He said he would when he ran for office. Did he do it? No. In fact, he's gone one step further. He claims the authority as commander-in-chief. He claims that he could just go ahead and have you killed, assassinated on sight. And he has a secret list of American citizens that he deems enemy combatants, that he decides are wartime enemies and could just be killed. And he claims that this list is secret and the courts have no business asking to see it or no business reviewing his decisions. This is his claim. And there are good, thankfully, there are still some liberals out there who have not drunk the Kool-Aid and are still paying attention, like Naomi Wolf, Glenn Greenwald. They were paying attention during the Bush years and they still are now. But I was consistent too. That's why it's kind of sad that I get attacked now. When I was writing about this stuff at Yale Law School, the liberal professors loved me. And the liberal students loved me because I was criticizing Bush. And they thought I was a liberal. But now that, and of course the conservatives thought I was a liberal too. But now they think I'm some kind of right-wing Nazi because I dare to criticize Obama. What I am is a constitutionalist. I don't care who's in power. I don't care if it's a political party. It doesn't matter whether it's from the left or the right. If they violate the Constitution, I will call them on it. We all have to call them on it. So, one of the things that keeps me awake at night, how many folks here read Naomi Wolf's book, The End of America, A Letter to a Young Patriot? I highly recommend it. It's very good. She was right. She still is right. The elements of the police state and the elements of totalitarian national security state have been put in place. All that's really left, the legal precedents, the legal foundations are put in place already. All that's really left is a trigger mechanism. Now, in World War II, we saw something similar to what I'm talking about. In the height of fear, when folks were really afraid of invasion from Japan, what happened? You had mass internment of Japanese Americans. U.S. citizens, they were treated like a foreign enemy in wartime. Under our Constitution, under the international laws of war, yes, you can apply the laws of war to foreign enemies. You still have to obey the Geneva Conventions and UCMJ and the laws of war, but they can be applied to an enemy, a foreign enemy. But what do you do with an American that you think is aiding the enemy, which is what they were accused of? They accused the Japanese Americans of aiding the Japanese, giving them information, and plotting to do saboteur work. What do you do with an American who you think is aiding the enemy or making war against his own country? What's the constitutional remedy for that? For what? It's a trial for treason, that's right. And long before you shoot them, they get a trial. If they're an American citizen or a legal resident, they get a trial for treason. Article 3 tells you precisely what to do. And the founders, because they understood that charge of treason was the worst thing you could accuse someone of. The modern version is calling you a terrorist. But they understood that that's what kings would do, or rulers would do, is accuse you of treason, making war against your own people. That's what the whole Star Chamber was all about. So they put in place extra guarantees. Not only do you get a civilian trial in front of a jury of your peers, but it requires 2 witnesses. 2 witnesses, just 1, 2, to the overt act of supporting the enemy or making war against your own country. Not just your voice. You have to actually act. And I would further argue that it has to be during a declared war so you know who the enemy is, who you can't support. Okay? In the absence of a declared war, how do you know? In the war on terror, how do you know if you're aiding and abetting the enemy? Who's the enemy? Anybody they want to make the enemy. So, in clear violation of the constitutional structure for what you do with an American accused of making war against his own country, they have claimed that no, they can go ahead and grab international laws of war and bring them home and supplant the Bill of Rights. No more jury trial, no more right to an indictment, no more right to confront your accusers. We're back at the Star Chamber again. That's the legal claim. And the folks say, well, big deal, only 2 guys have been detained like that. Well, the problem is, once the precedent is set, all you need is a trigger. Another Pearl Harbor, for example, which triggered the internment of Japanese Americans. You got to pay attention to the structure. Well, just pay attention to how many might be whisked away. How many folks here know what happened to Bradley Manning, the guy who was a whistleblower for WikiLeaks? What's the treatment been like for him? Kind of the same kind of stuff, right? Put in isolation, forced to sleep naked. I had a reporter ask me what I thought about that. I said, I think it's atrocious. In this country, you are innocent until proven guilty. And they're punishing you before the fact. That's just flat wrong. But unfortunately, we kind of deteriorated our knowledge and our understanding of our own basic principles. Right now, in Arizona, how many folks here have heard about the young Marine that was shot by SWAT on May 5th? On May 5th, SWAT team served, it's a search warrant they were serving in a conspiracy case, a narcotics conspiracy case. Now, anybody who knows anything about law knows that conspiracy is the lowest threshold of accusation. If you just talk to someone in a hypothetical situation, what you might do someday, that could be enough to trigger a conspiracy charge. So, they're serving a warrant against a guy with no criminal history, totally clean criminal history. Like a long rap sheet of violent criminal offenses in the past. So what's their justification for going in there with a full SWAT team on a raid? Well, just the fact that it's a narcotics investigation is one. Another reason given by SWAT teams is that the person may be armed. Well, how many Americans are armed? Millions and millions of Americans are armed. And so they busted his door in. Well, first they pounded on. About 4 seconds later, they busted the door in. The wife had seen someone outside. She saw someone through the window. She saw a man with a gun. And she yelled to her husband, Jose, Jose, wake up. And he wakes up. And he tells her to push. He says, go in the closet with a little boy, 40-year-old son. Go in the closet. And he grabs his AR-15 rifle because he thinks it's a home invasion. And he goes to face the intruders. And they bust the door open, see him, and shoot him dead. Shot 71 rounds, hit him 60 times. So, But here's the kicker. His safety was still on. How many Marines are in here right now? How many U.S. Marines are there? I'm a paratrooper. How many Marines we got? Any Marines? Why would your safety still be on? You haven't decided to fire yet. You're still waiting to see, waiting to identify the threat. A person well-trained in small arms, they're trained to flick that safety on and off as they move around on M4s. So I think the reason why his safety was still on, not because he was incompetent, he was trying to kill cops and couldn't do it, it's because he didn't know who they were. Home invasions are very prominent in Tucson. They happen all the time. In fact, his wife had 2 relatives that died in a home invasion this last year. So, here's a guy who doesn't know who these people are coming through his door. He's doing the same thing a lot of us would do, whether we're former police officers. I asked a bunch of cops in my organization and Oathkeepers what they would do. They said the same thing. They would not know if it's a criminal home invader. They would react the same way. And so they'd be shot on sight. Because while they're trying to make a decision, if this is a good guy with a gun, a cop, or a bad guy with a gun, a home invading criminal, while they're making that decision loop, the police have only one decision. Man with guns, shoot. That's it. There's a serious problem when you have SWAT teams kicking in your door just to serve a search warrant. That should not happen in a free society.
Amen.
The Fourth Amendment is supposed to protect us against unreasonable searches.
That's right.
It's supposed to be secure in our homes. I can't think of a more unreasonable search than one that kills you. And I can't think of also, an unreasonable search to me is also having masked men kick at my door. And if I, damn if I do, damn if I don't. If I don't defend, if I just submit, and they turn out to be criminals masquerading as police, which they do a lot, then my family and I could be killed. My daughters and my wife can be raped and murdered and tortured, which happens. If I do fight back and it turns out to be the police, they're going to shoot me on sight. So how is that reasonable? To force me into that no-win situation? It's not. And that's where we're going down there on Monday. We're calling on all Oathkeepers and all patriots, all those who care about the Fourth Amendment, to go with us to Tucson. We're going to hold a memorial in front of this Marine's house. And we're going down there to honor him and also all others who have fallen. Many folks here understand the reality of war. It's not always done for the best of purposes. Marine General Smedley Butler once said, this is a 2-time Medal of Honor winner, Smedley Butler. He once said, there are only 2 things we're fighting for, your homes and the Bill of Rights. And we have to fight for our Bill of Rights. So, the Sheriff Mack and I are going to go down there. Now, there were some police in our organization that didn't want to do this. They thought that would hurt our ability to reach the police. And I said to them, well, you want to preserve this relationship with cops so that one day you can reach them, right? And they go, yeah. I said, when are you ever going to do it, though? If you won't reach them about this, to stop this, then what are you waiting for? What are you going to save yourself for? One day, someday, it'll be an important enough issue to break the wall of silence among police? Sheriff Mack didn't agree with that idea. He said, no. He said, I'm sick and tired of this kind of stuff happening in my country. He said, now is the time. Police have to police their own. He said, if they do something wrong, I'm going to have to call them on it. If they do something right, I'll do that too. And he said, this is wrong. So he's going to be there, I'm going to be there, and if you can make it at all, I encourage you to go. I don't care if you're prior service or not. Go take a stand for the Fourth Amendment. Your right to be secure in your homes. No one should be running through your door and sticking a machine gun in your face or your kids' faces. I don't care what the excuse is. And usually it's because of the war on drugs. I mean, SWAT started out for barricaded suspects, for hostage situations. That kind of stuff makes sense. They're going to save lives. When they kick in the door of a pot grower, what life are they saving? Where? The war on drugs, as many of you know, has been a failure, except in this sense. As a war on a Bill of Rights, it's been a smashing success. And now we got the Supreme Court of Indiana telling us that you have no right to resist even unlawful entry into your home. So say a police officer, if he gets off duty, he sees your wife at the gym, he decides she's kind of hot looking. So he's going to follow her home, he's going to kick in the door, and go walk through your house, and get a better look at her in the shower. And they're telling you can't do anything about that.
Full auto.
What are you in a country like that? Are you a citizen, or what are you? You're a serf or a slave. That's right. So we're going to go to Indiana too. The Fourth Amendment right now is under assault. And one of the things I'm happy to see is a lot of conservatives out there, a lot of gun owners on the chat boards are as mad about this as the liberals are. That's a good sign. Because for far too long, many conservatives cared only about the Second Amendment and not the Fourth. And too many liberals cared only about the Fourth and not the Second, being inconsistent. We don't get to pick and choose. They're all there for a reason. Every one of them is there for a purpose. As Michael Bolden always says, you know, it's the Constitution, all the time, every issue, no excuses. That's how it has to be. Until we, the people, decide to change it and amend it or cast it off. Now remember what you said in the Declaration of Independence. What's the point of government? To secure your rights, right? Your rights to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, among them. Your rights are as innumerable as the stars. Do you have a right? Can you go find a right to marry in the Constitution? Or a right to have children? Can you find it there? Does it mean you have the right to do it? You have a natural right to do all kinds of things. Amen. It's the government that has limitations on it, not you. So long as you hurt nobody else, you have a right to do what you want with yourself and the fruits of your labor. You own yourself. But that's what the founders believed. That's what Jefferson believed anyway. That's my favorite founding father. But what happens when the government becomes abusive of these ends? When the government starts to violate your rights, like invading your home like a home invader, then what does it become? It becomes illegitimate. When it claims the authority to black bag you or assassinate you and do what it wants to with you without due process, what is it? It's as bad as the king was, worse frankly, worse than Parliament was. And it's as bad or worse than any home invading gang ever could be. I'm not afraid of a home invading gang. Me and my dogs will fight them off. I am afraid and concerned what would happen in my home with 5 kids. If a SWAT team came through my door and put an MP5 to my son's head. One story, you go to Radley Balco's site or to Cato Institute, and you can find an interactive map of SWAT team raids across the country, where they've gone to the wrong house, where they shot innocent people. And one of the stories was of a SWAT raid on a home with kids in it. They put the whole family on the floor at gunpoint, and the SWAT guy was holding a shotgun to the back of an 11-year-old boy's head, and the shotgun discharged and blew his head off. How is that a reasonable search?
Hell no.
It's not. We've got to stand up for the Fourth Amendment right now. I don't care if it's the Supreme Court. You saw they ruled last week, right? Like if a cop knocks on your door and he thinks he hears what he thinks, maybe destruction of evidence, that he can go and kick the door in with no warrant. That's not a free country. We got to fight back. And I say fight back in the States, and that's why I'm here at the 10th Amendment Center. Because the first thing we got to do is we got to go to Indiana, and you got to nail some skins on the wall, figuratively. You got to make an example of those justices there. Get them out of office by any legal means necessary. You do whatever you have to do. Be creative about it. Impeachment, vote them out of office, overrule them by the legislature, amend the Constitution of Indiana, whatever's got to be done. Make that the litmus test. If you won't do that, and that can be done, it's hard to reverse a Supreme Court decision. Good luck. They're there forever. They're like fossils or something. They're there forever. And only one of them, Ginsburg, who I disagree with a lot on most things, but she got it right this time. What's wrong with the rest of them? That's really hard to fix. But Indiana, you can fix. Those are elected judges. They can be impeached by the legislature. They can be overridden. Go to Indiana, focus your energy there, get that done, and let that be a warning to the other justices in every other state that if they do anything like that, you'll do the same to them. Every time one of them steps up and does something like that, make an example out of those people. If they're going to violate the Fourth Amendment and crap all over your Constitution, then you got to go there and take them out. Legally, of course. Okay, am I out of time?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, folks.